Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon during your lunchtime. We are very happy to have you today with us. My name is Zenro.
And my name is Laura, and we are from Goy Architects.
Today's session is about endearing pursuits. It's something that has been very close to our hearts, and we'd like to talk to you about it in this webinar session. This webinar session will be briefly just covered in three segments. First, which is what is the issue, what is our current state of working environment as architects and designers. Second part of it is what is the possible cause of having this kind of work culture. And the third part that we would like to talk about is our aspiration in resolving this situation of our stressful work culture, I guess.
Yeah, so let's get started.
So first up, we're going to talk about the problem as we see it. Based on the recent SIA survey, it's quite scary to find out that actually 93% of the respondents of young architects are actually thinking about leaving the profession.
And I think something is even more than that there have been a recent survey from the Architecture Journal in the UK that showed that at least a third of students have responded that they are either taking or had mental health treatments for their stress levels in school.
Yeah, it's also quite uncanny to find out that a lot of female architects in the industry is also leaving the practitioner. And I think that this is something that is a worrying trend, and I think that we should be talking about it. Laura, I think we had this conversation many times, and I think as a fresh graduate, it's also something that is very important for you as someone who wants to have a very nice work environment. We talk about this fetishization of labor, whereby it's almost like a badge of honor to be doing overnighters in the universities and in the company, and then this is something that has been applauded by different people to think that this is, in order for you to get good architecture, the hours is absolutely necessary and you have to sacrifice everything else, and it has to be just contributed to your profession itself. So what do you think about it actually as a young architect?
True also, especially since I'm seeing a lot of people or people in my batch or my seniors who are slowly starting to get burned out. And then they come and said that, it's because that for all their free time and they work such long hours that they give up a lot of other things. So stuff like passion or having time for their friends and family are things that they sacrifice for their work. But whether it's fully sustainable or not is a different question.
In your perspective, what do you think that it could be causing this kind of perception of architects having to have this kind of life?
I think it's a mix of a lot of things also. One of the reasons is because the idea of an architect is someone who knows everything and who does everything. And I think sometimes it's a lot of unfair pressure for architects ourselves, because whenever we do a project, it's not just for us. We work with builders, we work with craftsmen, and it's a combination of all of this that actually produces the work. But for us, when we see it, sometimes you get the idea that all the stress and the pressure is something that we have to bear.
I think that on top of this idealization of being an architect, being a know-it-all, it's also, I feel that part of the problem could also come both in terms of where we start our education on the educational level. Because I remember when I started my freshman year and during the orientation camps, I was advised by my seniors to always bring a toothbrush to school, because staying overnight, doing an overnighter is almost like the right to your profession being an architect. And I find that this is something very crazy, but it is an accepted norm. So I find that I don't know whether this is a matter that we should be talking about in schools or in a professional sphere, because what you learn in university is something that you apply in the workspace. So if you have this kind of culture of doing an overnighter, that time is not limited, that time is that you can actually pull out a whole nighter and then it is fine, and this kind of culture would actually perpetuate into your work culture as well. I think one important aspect that we have not been really talking about is also a person's aspirations, whether it's in line with the company's vision. I think this is also something that it has to be discussed, because this is it is actually a crucial component that forms whether a person would be satisfied with their job or not.
I think in terms of understanding, of trying to get the idea about how my values and what I want in personal growth is in line with the firms or not, I think it comes with a lot of understanding about myself like what I think is important in terms of priorities in my life. Like yes, work is one of the highest ones there, but I also understand that if I go with just that, it will not be enough to sustain me through the rest of my life. And I think it's also important for me that I wanted to find a place where it could help push me at the same time, while also understanding that there are certain structure in terms of how I would like to work. I think a lot of it has come into play with how the firm views work and the person as well. So for our firm at least, I think one of the ways that we do it is that we try to be as efficient as possible during the working hours, depending on the tools we use, or also in working together with each other, because everyone has their own different strengths and weaknesses. And through like pulling each other's strengths together, we are able to complete things faster and better than if we were to do it by ourselves. And I think a lot of the things that come into play with that also is in terms of the tools that we use and how we actually work together and how we view this idea of working together as a team.
To be honest, it is not easy because there is really a lot of things that you have to take care of. During the work days, which is Monday to Friday, you already have the jobs that's coming in and then you have to manage that. And during the weekend, somehow you have to also kind of think about ways to structure the company or improve the processes within the company so that you are able to be more effective or efficient during the work week itself. So how do we find time is really a matter of choice, whether or not you say that this is a priority to you and whether or not this is something that you want to say that it actually helps in terms of my professional development as well. This is my free time and this is something that I need to grow as a profession. This is something that allows me to maintain my mental health as well as my well-being. And with that, I believe that I'm able to become a better architect during the work hours in that sense. So I think maybe initially when we started the company, I wanted a program that doesn't requires me to toggle between different programs. And I really wanted to eliminate the redundancy of drawing. I wanted a program that allows me to be able to make a change and all the drawings will be updated automatically. And this is from what I have experienced during as a professional architect. A lot of drawings is usually there's always errors when it's done on different kind of softwares or when you're drawing everything manually. So the choice for me to go for a BIM software like Archicad was a very natural choice, as it allows me to make one change and that change will be perpetuated for all my drawings. And what I really like about it is that it also allows us to do teamwork. So this teamwork function allows us to be able to model on the same model together, and the model is actually hosted on a BIM cloud itself. So for example, if I were to be modeling on this house and Laura could be working on the light layouts and I could be actually changing the toilet layouts all at the same time, and we will be able to have a holistic understanding of how this project is actually happening. And on top of that, with our colleagues that is based in Indonesia and Thailand, we are able to also kind of work together with them on this same model, and they will also have a better visualization of the general design goals of the whole project itself. And being this efficient allows us to actually find time in material development, which is something that we do with our Thailand and Indonesian colleagues, whereby we will go to different manufacturers to test out different products like ceramic tiles or even custom-made furnitures.
I think besides the obvious reasons of saving time, especially when you do model things, when you do CAD, to model things instead of doing CAD, I think another thing that collaborative tools like Archicad has helped is in the sense of feeling like you're not working alone. So if you have any problems or if you have any questions, it is much easier for you to ask your colleagues no matter where they are in the world. So for most of the times that when I work with the colleagues there in Thailand, but I'm able to discuss it very closely. And I think that has helped me a lot, especially in terms of when I leave the office, because the amount of stress that you have is much lesser because you know that when you're doing this, you're not doing it alone. And it's very easy for you to communicate your problems. Communication is easier, you're able to solve your problems faster, and that relieves a lot of the stress that you might have for your own work. And I think that's one of the biggest things that Archicad or these kind of tools have helped.
And we really also like the fact that the communications between the clients and the contractors are really close. We are able to show them the model through an app, either through an iPad or through their handphones. With the BMAX model, we are able to show them how this whole design actually look like in construction, how it would actually look like in reality. And this is a way that we use for our project in Sukabumi Farmstay in Indonesia, whereby I'm based in Singapore and the project is in Indonesia. And it is through this app tool that we are able to actually show the contractors on site what the building might look like. And because a lot of them are not professionally trained to read drawings like how we usually would draw in a 2D kind of drawings, with the 3D visualization, it allows them a easier way to understand what we have as a design intent. And sometimes they would also guide us in their local practices what is a better way of doing it. And we will be able to adapt and change the model, and it will be directly reflected on the 3D app itself. So I find that this way of communication is definitely very exciting. It is a little bit more engaging in that sense that we are able to connect directly to the contractors as well as the builders as well as the clients. I think that maybe if we just look at 10 years back, whereby this whole idea of like virtual cloud storage as well as collaborative working is not as rampant as what you see now during COVID era in that sense. You can see that the way of designing as well as structuring of the company is slightly different in that sense that 10 years ago, we will be working in a very linear kind of setting. So one person would have to come up with a concept, the other one would have to develop it, and then it kind of moved down the train, and there will be somebody that is CADing it, and then somebody that will be doing some post editing and stuff like that. So it is a very linear kind of a design process, whereby once there's a change from the top, everything has to be changed again and again and again and again. And I find that it's also a very a linear hierarchical way of designing, whereby there's one lead designer and everybody else is just supporting this lead designer. Whereas if you look at now how we are operating, using this collaborative cloud kind of way of documenting as well as drawing our drawings, you are able to have a direct feedback from all different designers at the same time, because everybody is looking at the model at the same time. And what is beautiful about it is that it became a very egalitarian kind of working environment, whereby whoever that has the ideas could just contribute directly to the model itself, and we are able to visualize it immediately. And the most beautiful part of it is that we are not bound by the location that we are in. We could be working with talented designers that is in Thailand, in Indonesia, and getting their inspiration, because we have different cultural kind of references as well. And I think that would actually create a very dynamic and interesting work environment, and it helps in our design process as well.
I think in terms of other digital tools that we've also used, one of the key things we use a lot is the 360 camera, because especially with a majority of our team not being in Singapore in itself, like this is an easy way for us to actually show them how the space is like, to be able to go and express it to them and then design it together through using the sharing of these kind of visualizations that will go across borders. Yeah, so we use this a lot, especially for one of our interior projects in the Thai embassy, where we were commissioned to help them to do some of the interior design and architecture.
We were commissioned a project 5 years ago to build an organic vegetable farmstay in Sukabumi. The project name is Sukasanchai. It's a 12-room farmstay that is at the base of Mount Gede. So the process is actually very interesting because, as you know, the project is based in Indonesia and we are in Singapore. So how do we go about doing it? At that point of time, Desi, who is our colleague in Indonesia, also just joined us. And what we use as a software is actually Archicad. And the reason why we use it is because when we have colleagues that's working in 2 different countries, we are able to access the model directly. What is even more interesting is that once the model is completed, we are able to translate this into a 3D modeling app, which is called BMax. And this BMax can be easily accessed by the contractors on site. So the usual way of communication between the contractors and us is not just using the drawings itself, the 2D drawings itself, but a lot of 3D visualization. As you know, as information is not perfect in that sense, we are unable to capture everything on design stage, and a lot of details and problem solving of the project has to be solved on site itself. So the contractors will be taking pictures of the site situation, will be probably like doing a screenshot of the BMax model and just annotating the problem and sending it over to us like a RFI, which is like Singapore version of a request for information. And with that information, we would then do a quick sketch over our BMax model, and then we will send it over them via WhatsApp or email, for example. And because the internet access in Sukabumi is also very bad, so the only form of communication is usually via WhatsApp tool or whatever mobile communication tool that we use. And with this kind of interactive way of discussing, we are able to create something, we create certain details of the architecture that is very adaptive to the local climate. And we are able to kind of change the architecture also in advice of what the builders on site is advising us. And we find that this is actually very useful in our whole architectural journey with the clients and the contractors.
I think perhaps one of the things that idea comes about is because, especially in design, there seems to be no end or no perfect idea or no perfect like solution to a lot of things. And then the idea that we get, or maybe something that's encouraged also from the tutors to us, is saying that the more time you put into it, the more results you will get. But which is a good thing because it helps us to strive to do better and to improve ourselves. But then we're never actually told about where there should be a limit for that. Like, to what extent should we trade off our own personal lives in order to do this project or to do and study and learn better? And that's a discussion that as students we need to be aware of, and perhaps as like for the way that the system is run, especially in the school itself, it needs to take into account that we cannot always like push the student until the very end.
Yeah. I think the other white elephant that is also in the room is about this idea of self-worth as well as self-interest. I think that there is not enough conversation that talks about what is it that you want as a profession, what you want as a person, what is that you have interest in, what is it that you have passion for. And I find that this conversation or self-reflection of your personal goals or your personal wants is very important, because this would actually inform you of the kind of company or the kind of projects that you want to work on. What is it that really motivates you as a person is also something that I find that it is a very important topic for you to have some time yourself and kind of reflect and to understand a little bit better about it.
Yeah, and I think it's very good and very important as well, because especially when we do design for other people, we are designing what they want. And then so if we can understand that, as people, we have our own wants and we have own dreams and needs and priorities, when we do speak to other people, we become more empathetic as well. We understand where they're coming from if they say that, I want to do this because this reminds me of home, or this reminds me of a place that I grew up in. When we have such strong connections as well, in terms of our memories and our own self-identity, we're able to identify with them also and understand that, yes, I do think this is very important. I as a designer will try my best to push your design, to push the environment that I'm creating to help you with this.
I think that that's a very important point that you've raised up. And not only being empathetic to clients, it's also empathetic to yourself, to finding the job that actually complements you. And I find that a lot of dissatisfaction is when you do not find this complementary. I think maybe a tip for the younger audience or the younger architects out there is really to find a company that really reflects your goals as well as your vision. I think you are doing the company a lot of favor as well when you are finding something that you like, because then you will be passionate about it. Then you will really kind of be in line with what is it that they would like to do. And this would actually be a very good source of motivation as well as inspiration for your career as well. Yeah. So I think as a owner of like a small architectural firm, I'm also constantly questioning and asking myself, how is it that I could create a more balanced work or environment, or a more enjoyable work environment, basically. And I find that there is a few key concepts that have always been reoccurring to me, which is the whole idea of autonomy, the second idea of flexibility, and maybe the third idea of like responsibility that the employees or like my colleagues would have when they are working with Goy Architects, for example. I think that all these characteristics or concepts are fundamental ideas that would give fulfillment for somebody's job, for example. And to be able to control your own time, to be able to kind of voice out the kind of projects that you would like to be in. And together as a company, we could possibly look out for all this kind of projects so that we could also fulfill the colleagues' personal goals for themselves. Basically now we are talking about like what are the solutions that we could actually help to improve or maybe start the discussion of having a better work environment for architects and designers. And I think we have actually 4 points that we kind of summarize. Laura, maybe you want to start like the first part. Yeah.
I think one of the first things is that the idea of the changing of culture really comes from where we learn how to be architects, and that would be in the schools themselves. And then so as much as we do want to try to be as best as we can, I think an open dialogue needs to be created, especially within staff or within the system itself and the students, to understand on which is the best way that we can do in order to get the students to their fullest potential, and what is the kind of work culture do we want to create in that one which pushes us, but that not to the point of like burnout or mental health issues. And I think that is a bit too far.
Yeah, I think the badge of honor of fetishization of like work hours also needs to be addressed and also discussed, that this is not something that allows you, this is not the only way that allows you to have good architecture as an outcome by putting in super long hours, I would say. I think the second part of it is actually the work environment. As a practitioner as well as a company owner as well, I find that giving autonomy as well as flexibility to the employees or to my colleagues is something that helps us grow as a team, because it allows them to have control over what kind of work that they would like to do, as well as the hours that they would like to put in. And we find that with this kind of collaborative structure, actually it allows us to have a more creative atmosphere and a more open kind of a dialogue between the colleagues. And I think this actually brings about better designs as well.
And the third point, adding on to that, in terms of the collaborative ideas and exchange of ideas, I think it is the understanding also needs to shift a bit, that the architect does not always need to be the one who knows everything and knows how to do everything. And using the tools that we have and having open communication is one way of creating better designs and better work, not only by ourselves as the designers, but together with other people who help build it. Whether they're the contractors or the craftsmen, all these people have different specialized knowledge in their own fields, and having a sense of open communication and discussing things together really helps to make better projects at the end of the day.
Yeah, and lastly but not least, I think having a digital tool that allows you to do things more effectively, to kind of cancel out the repetitive kind of work tasks of drafting over and over again. It's part of the whole ecosystem of having getting a better kind of work environment for architects. So for example, using a BIM tool like Archicad, it allows us to draw once and then everything is updated at the same time, or to be able to have a very effective visualization tool for the contractors as well as the clients to have a very open and collaborative discussion. This actually helps us to save us a lot of time, and hopefully it gives us a bit more free leisure time, I guess.
So we've almost come to the end of our webinar. Maybe it's time for us to go and look at the questions that we have had and try to answer some of them.
Using a BIM tool like Archicad and using like an app like BIMAX, actually creates a better trust component between the clients as well as the contractors, because we are able to show them the end result as per what it's going to be built. And this would actually allows them to visualize and, to a certain sense, allow them to feel that they are much more in control. And once the client and the contractor feels that they know the complete picture of what is that they're expecting, the trust level usually will be slightly better in that sense.
I think like learning a new tool, especially, or implementing new things, is never easy, but one of the key important parts is actually having the commitment to do it. So having the commitment as in like everyone agreeing together, trying this thing, trying our best, learning it as much as we can, and working with it together.
Smaller firms have an advantage because it's a small team and we are able to kind of learn the tool quite quickly together. At least this is what we have experienced. And I find that it's important for us to really find the merits of what the new tool is bringing to the company. It's not changing just for the sake of changing, but really trying to find an effect of what kind of improvement it can do for our daily lives, as our daily jobs as well. I think once we are able to demonstrate it to our colleagues that this has sufficient impact in the way that we work on our daily lives, I think everybody will be very eager to kind of pick up this new tool. To be honest, I don't know how I would have done this practice without using Beam. That is really the honest fact. I really find that there is such leverage in having to have the model on a cloud basis, that you are able to access the model wherever you are. You are not bound to a location per se. You are able to interact with different colleagues that is at different part of the world, and you are able to kind of get influences from their cultures and to have access to their manufacturing, craftspeople and stuff like that. I find that this is a revolution for a small firm like us. To think that 10 years ago we would not be able to practice like this, to think that 10 years ago working from home or working from different areas of the country would not have been particularly accepted by clients. I think this is a time whereby young firms have it, or small firms have it, to their advantage.
And with that, I think we've come to the end of our webinar. Thank you for spending your time with us.
We hope that you have enjoyed this session and speak to you soon. Bye.